Hello, this is Angelia with today's wisdom. Today's wisdom comes from Daily Om. Taking another look. Importance of second chances. When we meet someone for the first time, we often create a defining image in our minds of who that person is, and that is something that is a problem in my family, especially codependent families. Are labelers. This person's that, this person's that, this, and that might not be based on anything but their own perception. But I can tell you, I assume other people have a life I don't know about, and they have a personality, different from what they show me when they first meet me. And I don't understand why everyone doesn't do that, but they don't. So that is something to keep in mind. Don't be a labeler. When you meet someone, you can notice what they like, what they do, but that's not their whole personality. We may also determine whether or not that someone is worth getting to know. And we all do that. We're kind of measuring each other out. Like I say, I like good, intelligent, thoughtful, loving, decent people. So if you're presenting me something other than that, I'm going to be like, yeah. There are people who I spend a few moments with and I already know I'm not going to like them just because of the way they're talking, and then, sometimes that's all you need to know. But in general, you try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes they're having a bad day or whatever, and I'm pretty patient. You can ask my husband, he tells me that all the time, that I give people a lot of chances to do the right thing, and and then I get disappointed when they don't. So sometimes when an initial interaction is particularly uncomfortable or challenging, we can decide to close our hearts to this new acquaintance entirely. And like I say, there are folks, like I say, if I meet somebody and they're cussing like a sailor and, saying all kinds of mean, negative stuff, that's not for me. Because, I'm a positive person, and I let a little French slip out every now and then, as my mom used to call it. She'd say, excuse my French. But, I'm not sitting there, being a jerk to everybody. So, sometimes we just know there are folks we just don't want to associate with. But being too quick to judge can cause us to lose out on a potentially wonderful, enriching, good gosh, relationship. If my glasses wasn't fogging, if, it wasn't hot air, I can't, it's a long story. But, that's true sometimes. Sometimes you catch people on a bad day. I met a woman one time at an event, and I was like, wow. But then the next time I met this woman at another event, she seemed like a really sweet, nice person. So evidently that particular day she was upset, and I kind of said something to her to that effect, is like, well, the first time I met you were, and she goes, oh, that's because I was mad because, this happened, I had to deal with, the city and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay. So sometimes we are quick to judge. So you should give people at least a second chance. I usually give people 3 chances, And, a lot of my life is about baseball. 3 strikes, you're out. But, you might find out that you found a friend, even though they made a bad first impression. First impressions don't always give the complete picture. So if you meet someone who leaves you less than impressed, consider giving them a second chance. And like I say, I usually try to do that. Sometimes people realize that I'm a good-natured, person, and I'll give you some wiggle room, and they take advantage of that. It's been on more than one occasion where, I've been told, you need to stop being with them, you need to stop hanging with them, you need to stop talking with them, because they're just doing nothing but bad to you. And I'm like, well, but, no, because my family, they try to guard me from being too good and nice to people. But I try to give people a second chance, and usually that ends up hurting me. But I think I try to run everything by the WWJD. What would Jesus do? So unfortunately, here in this life, that's gonna cost you a little something. You might be pleasantly surprised, and like I said, one time this woman became a really good friend of mine. She moved on, but I'm glad that I got to know her, and we had some really good talks, and I went to her house and things, and we did some stuff together and made some arts and crafts and stuff like that, went places together. So I'm glad I got to know her, even though she made a bad first impression. Everyone deserves to be given a second chance. And that's true, because like I said, you don't know what's going on with somebody. You really don't. We know from personal experience how painful it can be when people misunderstand or judge us. And that's true. I went through a situation recently. I was not allowed to present my side of things at all. I was just told, yeah. And I'm like, well, okay then, if that's the way you feel, you jerk. But, it doesn't feel good to be misunderstood or judged a certain way. And, I kind of grew up with that. Like I say, I was the black sheep of my generation. In the generation before me, I had an uncle who was the black sheep. In the generation before that, I had another uncle who was the black sheep. And for what I hear, in the great-grandparents' generation, there was another uncle who was the bad sheep. So this has been a thing going on for generations that I chose to stop. Because they started in on one of my kids, and I'm like, no, no, you are not doing that to him. I had to put up with that crap. You're not doing it to him. And, they started arguing with me, and I'm like, no, and then they wanted to talk to him. They tried to, get a hold of him, write letters to him and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, that's not happening. You're not going to treat my kid that way. And so I put a stop to that. Someone in some generation has to put a stop to, there being a need for a black sheep in the family where everybody else gets to pick on that person, and then they can feel better about themselves, which is, meaning they already feel bad about themselves and they're insecure, and so they have to have a black sheep to pick on to begin with. We ain't gonna get into the psychology of that, but I can tell you, we have good hearts and want them to be seen, and that's true. My dad, he knows me fairly well. He tells me, well, I know you'd give so-and-so the shirt off your back if they needed it. I'm like, yeah, probably so. But, he thinks that that's not a good thing. He thinks that sets me up for being hurt a lot. And technically, maybe sometimes it does, but I'd rather be that way than negative about everything. So that's just my choice. We have so much to offer and want others to welcome our gifts, and that's true too. That's why I'm bothering, teaching here online. That's why, right? I it's cathartic, but I want people to like the books and buy the books. I want people to like my art, buy the art, So, we all like someone to appreciate what we do. When someone shuts us out before they even know who we are, it can feel frustrating, hurtful, and confusing. And that's true, because, I've had people, I was working at a place one time, and there was this woman. She was a temp, and I was in charge of the temps. I was supervisor of the temps at the, place we were working at, Gannett Direct Marketing. And she came in, and she thought I was someone else. And she right up told me, she said, I'm not going to work for you. And I'm like, you're here to work. And she's like, I know you. You're a nurse, and you did this or that or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not a nurse, or I wouldn't be here working here. I'd be working as a nurse, making a heck of a lot better money. And she said, I'm not working for you. And I think you are that person. And so I went to my boss and I said, hey, we got a temp here, who's sitting there refusing to work, telling me she knows me, but she doesn't. She gave me a name, and it wasn't my name, and she won't work. And I told her that if she's not going to work, she can get on out. And she told me, no, she's going to sit here and get paid. So my boss came out and said, excuse me, you are not going to sit here and get paid. I am the supervisor of this area here, and if you're not going to work, you need to leave. And so the woman got ticked off, and she left. And it's like, I don't know why people are like that. It's clearly, I think the name she named was like Diane. But clearly I'm not Diane. My name is not Diane. Never been a nurse. I went to nursing school for a little while, but I couldn't stand blood and stuff, so I didn't even finish that. But, people are like that. They're dead sure that you did something or know something or whatever. And it's their own, I hate to say evil imaginations, or their own prejudices. And, it takes us aback. It takes us by surprise when that happens, because we're like, we're like, what is wrong with you? I clearly know who I am, so why would you even insist, that I'm somebody else? But that's just an example. There are people, that do that sort of thing. And, my son got accused of doing something in school when he says he wasn't doing it. And I believe him just because he was so upset about it. He was crying and everything. So, sometimes people just take us wrong. Some people assume, what you say means one thing when it means another thing. And, people just have problems getting along with folks sometimes. It can feel frustrating, hurtful, and confusing. By giving others a second chance, we can extend the same courtesy we would like for them to offer us. And, again, that's just, how we feel. Because I've had bad days, and you might have heard me out in the store and think, wow. But that's just because something that was going on was ticking me off that much or frustrating me that much. And I was just having a bad day. It's not that I'm like that all the time. And there are people who, assume. You know what happens when you assume. If you don't, ask an older person, they probably can tell you. But, people assume things about other people. I've had my feelings hurt a lot by people that accuse me of doing this or that, or being like this person or whatever. And I'm like, no, why would you think that? But people just think what they're going to go think, as it talks in the Bible about people's evil imaginations, or the evil imaginations of their heart. In this way, we set a precedence for all our relationships to allow everyone the freedom and safety to simply be human. And I believe that's, a good thing. Now, I don't believe in allowing yourself to be abused, because there comes a point where, why? Why be miserable and let someone be abusing you every day of your life? I recently came, to a situation where, I was like, I've had enough of this. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Why should I have to? So, sometimes you can give people a second chance, third, fourth, fifth, 100th, 200th chance, and it's still just not enough. They're still doing the wrong thing. And there comes a point where you're just allowed to say, that's it, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. It's a source of frustration in my life. I don't need this in my life. Especially as we get older, we just don't want to put up with it. It's like, why? Whether it is a blind date, the man sitting next to you, or the on the airplane, or your new neighbor, everyone has a full life outside of their interaction with you. And that's something I have always understood, and there are certain folks I know who don't understand that. I've had cousins, come and say this, that, and the other, and I'm like, no. Oh, well, that's what we thought. That's what we heard when you were little. And I'm like, well, I've grown up a little since then. Yeah, I used to like cinnamon apple rings, but now I don't anymore. I used to not like gravy when I was a kid, but now I do, you know. People grow and they change. I hope so anyway. Most people should grow and change. So I assume other people have life that I don't know anything about. It always kind of freaks me out when other people don't extend the same courtesy to me, that they are shocked or surprised if I'm somehow different than they thought I was. So, you know, I'm one of them things that make you go, But, you know, a lot of people do that. And that's unfortunate that, you know, they can't see that you are a whole person outside of what they see. They just judge you on what they see and hear. Don't realize, you know, you're a whole person outside of that. They may be preoccupied with a personal or business situation that affects the way they are presenting themselves, or maybe they had a rough day or some bad news. And like I say, that's usually when you'll catch me being like that, is I've had a problem that day, or something's going on and I'm just like, I don't want to deal with this, you know. And like I say, you might hear me use some French every now and then, but in general, I'm a happy person at baseline, so in general, I like to stay that way, you know. And if someone or something is making me too unhappy, I'm just like, it's become dead weight, chop it off, get done with it. You know, it's bringing me down, and I don't like to be down. If you give them the room to be who they are, where they are, you will allow yourself to do the same. And like I say, I allow other people to be them, as long as they're them is not hurting me. You know, and I try to do the same. I don't bring myself into them and hurt them on purpose. So, you know, it's all about common courtesy, common decency to your fellow human being. When you are considering giving someone a second chance, first check in with your inner knowing. And, you know, we all have gut feelings or, you know, intuition. And sometimes, you know, you can check in with that. But like one of my friends was saying to me about something, they're like, a snake only sheds a skin to become a bigger snake. Don't let them come back. But and then there was like another story on that, and I'm wondering, you know, if that was a coincidence or that was a message. I don't know. But yeah, we are here in this world together. We should try to get along, and you know, it doesn't do any good to just judge people and just throw everybody out that's not in your little circle, you know. It's like the Fokker movie, you know, the circle of trust. You're out of the circle of trust. But I joked that was like my parents, but you know, if you find that your intuition is advising you to keep your distance, it is important to honor the guidance you receive. Because sometimes you just know. Sometimes you have a feeling. Because I've had feelings and I didn't listen to him trying to be nice. And then I get, you know, bit in the end. So, you know, sometimes we know, but we second guess ourselves. Because we don't want that to be true. And that has hurt me in the past. That has cost me in the past. So, you know, listen to those little voices. By honoring your intuition when it has wisdom to share, you can feel confident and happy in your decision to give others a second chance or not. So, again, like I say, in general, most folks do deserve a second chance. Everyone can make a bad first impression. So, you know, if you want to offer people a second chance, take another look at them as a person, you know, that's probably a good thing most of the time. But again, listen to the little voice inside on whether you think, you know, this person is worthy of another chance or not. So, think about it. Thanks. Well, excuse me here. Trying to choke and talk and, think at the same time. It doesn't work. But, please like and share this wisdom so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching. That's all for now. Until next time.